Tessa with Hip Over 50. So, this channel is about my journey moving to England after growing up and living in Canada and the US most of my life. So, I'm finding out what life is like here, and I'm hoping to shed some light on it for you too, in case you're thinking of moving here or maybe coming over for a nice long visit. So, this video is in honor of the King's coronation, which is happening today as I do this video. And I was curious, and you may be too, about how does the English public feel about the royal family. A lot has gone on. Some of you may have watched The Crown and may wonder what really goes on behind the scenes or wonder how much of it is true. And of course, the one character that's not in The Crown is the British public. And we get glimpses of them from time to time, but we don't really know how the British public feel about their queen and king. Well, of course, Queen Elizabeth was very much loved and revered and well thought of. I think she was revered by people around the world. She was in the job long enough. She came to the throne at a time when the country was coming out of the Second World War and really needed some leadership. And I think she's kind of been a figurehead in more ways than one, almost like a mother figure and then a grandmother figure to so many Britons. Now, if I'm living in England, if I was in Wales, the story might be a little different. Scotland, Ireland, the same thing. Everybody's got a slightly different take on the royal family. And I was kind of curious, well, how do they feel about it now? I had somebody ask me when I was back in the States a couple of weeks ago, what is it like? What do people think about the royal family over here? And I was curious, so I went out and did a little informal poll. I talked to people in shops while on my walk, and this is what I found out. So you can pretty much the younger people that live here now aren't really bothered with the royal family. They aren't really in tune with what they're doing. They don't really care. One guy in a shop said, I wouldn't even know what was going on if it weren't for all the decorations. And the English love to go overboard with decorations. I mean, you saw them at the Diamond Jubilee, the Platinum Jubilee, the Queen's funeral. I mean, there was tons and tons of signs everywhere that something special was happening. They hang something called bunting, those little triangle flags on a string with the British flag on them. I mean, there's treats and tins of things and jars and all sorts of things out there for souvenirs for this king's coronation. But how do people feel about the king himself? Well, I think people think he's deserved the job, he's paid his dues, and he's an okay guy. They're not, he doesn't quite have the same status as his mom, but he has earned the job, and they don't think he's going to be in it for very long because Prince William and Kate, of course, are coming along with their children as the next generation. But if I talk to a slightly older generation, i.e. my generation, they have a much different viewpoint. One lady said, well, I don't really, I can't be bothered with it. There is some bitterness towards the royal family because they're seen to be extremely wealthy. And right now, while the country is in the grips of a cost of living crisis, people think it's kind of poor taste to splash out so much money on something like a coronation, or even for the royal family or anybody to be seen to be spending a lot of money on anything, quite frankly. And I think there's a little bit of I don't know if it's jealousy or envy, but resentment towards the royal family for being that wealthy and being in that position. But quite a few other people, one guy I talked to in Home Base, which is like Home Depot or Lowe's over here, he said that he is a royalist. He loves the royal family, and he thinks anybody who doesn't is not a patriot, and that or shouldn't call themselves an English person because he thinks they are at the heart of what makes Britain Britain. And he was strongly behind the king and the coronation, and he said, that's it. He alluded to the fact that he was ex-military, so that may have had something to do with it. There are strong ties between the military, I think, and the royal family. Another lady that I spoke to, very nice lady that I bumped into along the towpath, said, she, again, thinks it's a little bit over the top for Charles to be spending so much money on this coronation when people are struggling. But overall, I think anybody who cares at all thinks that the royal family is a uniting factor. And I even thought that is a good case to make for it because, United Kingdom isn't very united at the moment. All the countries are kind of got their own identity. They don't really want to be seen to be, part of the United Kingdom. They sort of resent England, I think, a little bit, resent London. And I think the royal family could be a uniting factor, not only in the United Kingdom, but across the Commonwealth. Of course, some countries like Australia and Canada are sort of making noises that they might like to leave the Commonwealth. But it has been a very strong tie for all of those countries throughout some very tumultuous years, both during the war years and in recent years. It's sort of, I think it gives the population something to unite behind and say that is who we are. That represents Britain. And I think most people are quite proud that they do have a royal family to represent Britain. And I think the royal family is actually, they've had their family troubles, as we all know from seeing in the news, but I think they do a good job of representing Britain. And I think certainly this next generation looks like they are going to be really on point, as the saying goes. I think William and Kate really know how to do the job, and because that's what it is, a job. It can't be easy. It can't be easy to be forced into the public eye, to always have to be perfect. Yes, the trade-off is you have a lot of power and wealth, but it does come at a cost, as we found out from other members of the royal family. So I think going forward, I think the royal family always deserves a place in British history and in British, life. I think it would be a very different kind of British life if we didn't have the royal family. And besides, they give us an opportunity to have these wonderful 3-day weekends to celebrate. And I hope that it will be uniting the country. I hope people will see it as a good thing. I do think most people think the royal family is, while not as relevant as they might have been, is still very important to British life. So there you go. That's what I found out from England. And I hope if you're watching the coronation, you have a fabulous time, maybe even a knees up. And we will see you on the next video. Thank you again. Bye-bye for now.